Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. How many of you have ever heard about blade baits? Maybe some of you. If you're avid fishermen, you have. And if any of you have been fishing for a long period in your life, you've probably heard of blade baits as well because they've been around forever. When I was a kid, they were like, I guess the bait that I remember was a head and sonar. And what they are, they're all made of metal. There's no plastic. They're just metal. So they're heavy and they're shaped like a fish. But blade baits react and look different in the water than any other kind of bait. And the reason I'm telling you about that right now is I'm thinking back to a day this spring. And before I even tell you that, I was reading one of the fishing magazines. A lot of times I'll try to read things and discover things that I might find that you might find interesting. But in this article that I was reading, it was talking about this time of the year, blade baits can be more effective than other types of artificial lures because when a blade bait, and let me try to describe a blade bait a little bit more to you before I tell you why they're effective. They're shaped like a fish. They tend to be small because they're heavy, and most of them have 1, 2, or 3 holes on top of them. The holes are where you tie your line on, and depending on which hole you choose will determine not only how it looks in the water, but how deep it will continue to run when you're bringing it in. So you kind of select, okay, this is how I want to fish it, or this is how I want to fish it. But the other thing is the action that they give off simulates or looks like a dying bait fish. It's not like a crankbait that has a dependable wobble or whatever. They sort of flutter. Like a dying bait will flutter. They can't get their momentum. They can't get their equilibrium. And so they're fluttering. They're falling on their side and they're coming back and they're fluttering. And this is what a blade bait looks like. And this time of the year, and I've mentioned this before to you, but this time of the year before winter, a lot of the schools of bait, a lot of those bait are dying off. They're really subject and affected by this dramatic change in weather. And so as these minnows, as we call them, as these small fish start dying and fluttering down, this is what the predators are seeing, and this is what they're feeding on. Now, let me tell you another time that happened this spring when I went out on the St. Lawrence River with my buddy Will and his friend and my friend, Mark McEwen of Lawrence, and he had come up, to fish. Now Mark is working with Garmin. But anyway, he had discovered that the fishing on the reservation was wonderful, and I'm fortunate to have a great friend, Will Clute, that takes me out there often to fish for bass. So anyway, we go out, and I had on a rattle trap. I figured, okay, this is a bait that works really well in the spring for me. It's called a lipless crankbait, I guess you could call a rattle trap. And they make lots of them. They don't have a lip on them. They sink, and they have a fast wiggle, and they rattle like crazy going through the water. They're a good bait. But they had already been out fishing. Mark and Will had been out. I got there late, and they came back to the dock to pick me up. And they told me, oh, yeah, Mark is really catching them. Well, Mark was using, it's called a steel shad. And I remember I was so impressed with this, I came back and did a radio spot for all of you folks the following week, telling you about the steel shad. It is a bait, like I told you. It's a blade bait. It's all made out of metal, and that's the name they give it. And it comes in different colors, or it comes in just a metallic, the silver or gold. And this one was like a silvery. He was having more luck on that than anything. And I thought, well, that's great. I'll catch him on the rattle trap. It's doing a lot of the same things. No. For every fish that I caught or had strike, he was getting 4 or 5. They were going crazy for that steel shad. And here is the point of it all. No matter how many lures we have, no matter what is our favorite lure, if you're not open-minded enough to try new things, and I got to tell you, there's always going to be some days where one type of technique of lure is going to work better than others. And I don't care who you are or whatever. And that really struck home to me that day. And so now winter is before us, and I'm hearing about blade baits being such a great last of season bait. I thought of that day this spring, and boy, oh boy, did it bring it back. And you know, what happens to me, a lot of times I'll go through the year and I might forget, or I might not. I might stick with what got me there. I stick with my favorite baits, and that's a good thing because we know they're going to catch fish. But a lot of times we keep ourselves from discovering some other things that might catch a lot more fish, and it might even be more fun. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.